everyone, it's Zach Wright, founder of Grapevine Software, the virtual office platform for your remote and hybrid workforce to stay connected, informed, and engaged from anywhere in the world. But we are coming back at you with this week's Future of Work Weekly Report. If you are not familiar with this series, this is where we take the hottest headlines and trending topics of the future of work and break them down so you can stay ahead of the curve whenever it comes to the future of work. So anything remote work, hybrid work, flexible work, AI, or productivity, that's what we're going to be discussing in these Future of Work Weekly Reports. But let's go ahead and dive into the first article because we have two today and we're going to try to get through them as quickly as possible. The first is coming from People Matters Global. It was published on June 14th, so a little bit later than what we normally do, but still pretty current. And the title of this article is Shaping the Future of Work, Strategies for Navigating Change. So let's go ahead and navigate to highlight number one, which is reinventing HR leadership. The key insight that we took away from this section of the article is that HR leaders must adapt to drive growth by embracing digitalization, fostering innovation, and prioritizing employee experience. What would be a good software to use in this situation? If you guessed Grapevine, then you are 100% correct. So if you haven't checked out Grapevine, definitely check us out. We have the way that you can sign up for 30 days free and test it out, or just check out our website in the show notes. But let's go ahead and talk about some statistics here. 62% of employers reported increased day-to-day responsibilities due to advances in HR technology. And then 84% of employers believe new HR tech has expanded their duties and required new skills. So I read the article. I didn't necessarily understand exactly what type of HR tech that they're talking about. I know that Grapevine specifically focuses on executive communications and employee experience for remote and hybrid organizations, but they might also be looking at certain HR technology like recruiting, so enhancing your application tracking system, especially with the introduction of AI into a lot of these tech offerings. So I'm thinking what they're looking at is HR has to reinvent themselves in the sense that everything that they were already doing, which is a lot, they have to take into consideration some of these other things that are coming down the pipeline. Now, I think the skills that they're talking about is honestly mainly focused around AI, artificial intelligence, but there could be another element such as learning new tools like Grapevine, which is an employee experience application at the moment will continue to grow into a little bit more into the productivity space and even performance space down the road. So stay tuned for that. But I think that that's what they're talking about here. And so we need to understand, what does this look like for our human resources professionals? And how can we as a company or industry and as the whole, how can we prepare all the HR people that we have out there to make sure that they're able to help create the best employee experience, whether they're in the office, remote, or hybrid, right? And then just being able to grow in your position and career, you're going to have to understand these as well. All right, let's go ahead and go to highlight number two, fostering employee experience excellence. So speaking of employee experience, highlight number two is calling that out specifically. And the key insight that we took away from this section is organizations must focus on the 4 pillars of employee experience: purpose, people, work, and total rewards. So if you think about your organization right now, how do people understand what the purpose of the company is? So why do they exist? So that's going to be your mission, vision, core values. But then also, why should that person work there? What is the purpose of them working there? And that's where the employee experience comes together. because you're able to connect the purpose of the company with the purpose of the person working there and that position that they hold. Then we have people. So we are going to want to make sure that we are supplying the organization with a way to keep people connected, even in this new landscape of work, which is highly flexible, right? So whether you're hybrid or whether you're 100% remote or a mixture, which is hybrid, you need to be able to figure out how are you going to foster that employee experience and make it excellent, so people are more likely to stay there. People are more likely to want to come and work for you, right? But let's look at some statistics here to drive this home a little bit further. 86% of employees perceive strong support for inclusion and diversity from senior leadership. At organizations driving change effectively, 87% of employees are satisfied with their involvement in decisions. So what they're saying here is inclusion and diversity, and then also involvement in decisions. So I think a lot of that can fall into inclusion, especially whenever it's so important to make sure that you're intentional on how you include employees if you're a 100% remote working organization or hybrid. Because if you're 100% remote, then that means that you have to have an environment that kind of drives that connection, especially for the introverts out there who are kind of a little bit more reserved. Just make sure that you provide them an environment, whether they're participating or not. You want to make sure that they have a place to go to stay up to date on the latest announcements, the latest updates, connecting with people, new employees coming on board, being able to search and find people to help them participate and do their position. That's where Grapevine is going to come into play, because we have an eclectic grouping of features and functionality that allows that to happen naturally. Right. And the reason that I said, even if they are only observing, you still need to have a place like that, because if you think about social media in general, there's a lot of people on LinkedIn. Let's keep it professional in this sense, right? There's a lot of people on LinkedIn. Not everybody engages the way that I do or the way that other people do on LinkedIn, but a lot of people are observing, right? So they might go to LinkedIn to find an article or stay up to date on something. So they might follow someone, but they're not necessarily engaging with their content, but they're definitely reading it. And that's the same case with Grapevine. We've built a very social media imitator, in a sense, for organizations, and being able to continuously update people seamlessly with a tool like ours is going to allow everybody to stay aligned. And if they do have questions, they can actually reach out to you one-on-one, or they can respond in a comment. So you want to make sure that you're creating an environment that is transparent, that is open, but also an environment that is used to how people work today, or how people experience life today, which is that social media aspect. So, all right. That's highlight number 2. Just to reiterate, it's fostering employee experience excellence. And you want to keep it fun and modern too, right? That's where we differ too. Because if you just get an update that's a text, so you think email, you think Slack, it's good for a little bit, but then it starts to get outdated. It starts to get overlooked, and people stop really paying attention to it. But whenever you add that visual element, that modernization element, that fun element, more people are going to be engaged. All right, let's go ahead and go to highlight number 3, which is empowering change accelerators. The insight that we took away from this section is change accelerators are crucial for driving organizational transformation and employee engagement. So basically what they're saying here is, I think it could be 2 forms, right? And I am going to talk a lot about Grapevine this episode, just because we are specifically in the arena and industry of what these 2 articles are talking about today, which is employee experience, but then also employee relations. So what we're talking about, change accelerators, are in physical people form. So you and I, like, we are transformational leaders, or we should be, and we're going to help guide people to adapt and adopt the new way of working, which is the future of work. And that could be that the office is no longer the source of truth, and the location that we go to is not that nucleus that we all come to gather anymore. And so whenever we're working, sometimes in the office, sometimes at home, sometimes while traveling, sometimes at a coffee shop, we still need that central source of truth, or that centralized platform. And again, that's where Grapevine is going to come in, because it doesn't matter where you work anymore, because all the information pertaining to your organization is going to go into Grapevine's office, or your virtual HQ, right? Now, the statistics here are 17% increase in high performing employees identified as change accelerators. And then 87% of employees satisfied with their involvement in decisions in the organizations that effectively drive change. So there's two things that we're really calling out here. One is change accelerators being crucial to drive organizational transformation. We need to tap into our high performing employees to help guide this change. So whenever we're doing a sell at Grapevine, what we need to do is find those specific change accelerators and have them become part of the coalition, or the champions that really push forward Grapevine being the ultimate centralized platform for remote and hybrid organizations. But at the same time, the organization and the leadership team needs to make sure that they're involving their employees in certain decisions that are being made. I've talked about this in several posts and podcasts before, but John Kotter has the book Leading Change. And in Leading Change, he has the 8 stages or steps for change management. And basically part of that is being able to have that transparency and involve people who are going to be affected in the change, because research and studies show that the more that the person is involved in a decision, especially in a decision that is going to cause huge change, they're more likely to accept the change, and even in some cases pioneer the change, right? So you want to, as an organization, be transparent and involve your employees, especially the high performers, because if you take that approach, then you're going to be able to drive this change, not just from you or the leadership team, but also from the employees' peers, right? And we know that employees will connect with their peers on a more personal level than their leaders, unless you have a unique leader. And so they're more likely to go and grow with that leader, or that peer, sorry. And so that is how you really drive change in this approach. And we're seeing tons of change in the world of work. And that's why this is an important highlight here. Because again, this is navigating the future of work here. Now let's go ahead and go to highlight number 4. Highlight number 4 is embedding flexible work in EVP. EVP, for those who don't know, is employee value proposition. So if I say EVP, that's what I mean here. The key insight that we're talking about is HR leaders need to define and listen to what flexibility means for their companies, incorporating it into their employee value proposition. Now, some of the statistics in this section, or one that they call out specifically, is not necessarily a statistic, but it's just a call out. Flexible work arrangements are a core part of the employee experience that factors into benefits and organizational transformation. So if you haven't understood the underlining theme of this article, it's employee experience. And what they really call out here is that employee experience is no longer a nice to have. Because you think about this, right? If you go into a physical office, over time, people start to interact with one another. They build friendships and cliques with one another, not in the sense of a silo, but it's how they get through the day, right? And now whenever you're working remotely or you're more dispersed than we ever have been in recent history, then what we need to do is make employee experience a priority. And that's going to fall under human resources in this case, right? Because they want to provide the environment that allows their employee to feel like they are part of the team, no matter where they're located, no matter where they're working from. And so those things are going to include onboarding, enablement. And those were kind of the things that in the office were taking place. And then over time, you kind of shadow certain people and all that kind of stuff. But even further in a virtual world or a virtual led world, you're going to need to be intentional on more things than just that. So yes, onboarding is always going to be important. Enablement, training is always going to be important. But now it's even more important to make sure that you have a setup in your working world that allows people to connect no matter where they are. Again, whether they're in the office, they're working while traveling, being a nomad, or they're working from home, you want to give someone the ability to see that person beyond what I call the squares and actually tap into who they are, because that's where they really fostered communication, collaboration, and culture in the office, where employees would go to the break room. And I know people talk about this all the time. Employees would go to the break room. They would actually learn about the person's life. What we've done in Grapevine is we've built this environment to allow for executive communications to break through the noise and break through the channel congestion that you probably have in Slack right now, or your internal email congestion that you probably have going on with 20 threads in one email. And then also it allows you to understand who the person is with our employee profiles, because we don't only have, which we do have, but not only have you the ability, give you the ability to show your skills, show your past experience. We also give you the ability to add your introduction so people can see you in a video. And then we also have you write your hobbies. What are the things that you're interested in? And then you have 8 photos that you can share. Maybe it's a picture of you and your wife, or you and your wife and your dog, or your kids, or your parents, like whatever, or an achievement that you just finish your MBA or something, right? It's a way to get people to understand who you are beyond the squares. Then we have our community news feed, which is where you can celebrate wins, you can celebrate achievements, you can celebrate promotions, you can recognize and reward people. There's so many things that you can do in Grapevine that you couldn't do in one platform up until this point. Plus, it's so modern, it doesn't even compare to anything else. So, okay, before we go to the next article, if you are interested by what I'm describing with Grapevine and you want to learn more, go to our website, or you can actually sign up for 30-day free trial. And as a part of that 30-day free trial, you will also get free onboarding. So we're going to come in and we're going to help you set up before you roll it out to all of your employees. And then you'll be able to actually trial the Grapevine office or virtual office platform in those free 30 days, instead of setting it up and then running out of time before you actually had a chance to test it, right? We do things differently here, and we like that. Okay, enough of the spiel. Let me get a sip of water. The mouth is a little dry right now. All right. Okay, article number 2 is coming from, let's see, this one is coming from People Matters as well. So, employees need to listen more in a rapidly changing work landscape. This is a Dexian study, and it was actually published Monday of this week, so June 24th. But let's see what they're talking about here. Highlight number one, we're going to be talking about AI in recruitment. So the key insight from this section is AI is disrupting the recruitment process, but there is a significant disconnect between employee preference and employer practice. The statistics are showing 72% of employees believe companies rely too much on AI in hiring, and only 24% of employees believe AI should be used in reviewing applications/resumes. Now, I've worked in the staffing industry. That's where I started my corporate career. I understand it's a little bit different than full-on HR, but I can 100% attest to this. Not necessarily the AI piece, but the automation of the hiring process. And whenever I speak with people who are trying to get positions, I used to do this a lot more compared to today, but I always tell them about the ATS, or the application tracking system. And we've already kind of had this vetting tool through machines versus actual real people, but it was like a gatekeeper. So whenever you apply for a position, you go through the application tracking system. And if that is a tool, then that tool is looking for keywords, right? And if you don't have those specific keywords or skills that they're looking for, you will automatically be rejected before even making it to a human. Now, I feel like if we could get AI to the appropriate level, then we should be able to actually enhance the ability to tap into the right candidate. So I know that 72% of employees believe that companies are relying too much on AI in hiring, but if done correctly, this actually can enhance the ability to improve the ATS tool that company uses, right? So maybe it's that people don't understand that ATS was already happening, and that's why a lot of times whenever you apply online, you're not hearing anything back because it's not getting to a person. Right? That's why it's good to apply to so many different organizations, write a cover letter, and then even tailor your resume to that specific description, or you might not make it through to the ATS. Now, with AI, again, if this is done correctly, we could actually see an improvement in recruiting. And even more important is less bias. Now, that's going to have to come with time, because we've seen the debacle with Google and their AI systems. We've seen the debacle with other companies out there that have flaws in their system becoming, I don't know if it would be racist or unintentional bias, but we have to understand that these systems a lot of times are learning based off of history. And we know, at least in the Americas, and I mean, there's a lot of places out in the world, that the history is not really good for people who don't look like me, right? So I can understand why employees believe that they're relying too much on AI, but I do think as we learn to adapt and build better AI LLMs systems, then we should actually see an improvement. And the only way to do that is to start and improve. So it's not going to be perfect. I think that there can be an A/B test where somebody is still manually going through the applications once they get past the ATS system. And again, I don't think that's perfect, but we have to be realistic, especially in these large companies who have hundreds, if not thousands, in some cases tens of thousands of applicants. There has to be a gating system, or it would take them years to actually hire someone. So it's not perfect. It is getting better, but we obviously need to continue to improve on that. So that's my take there. Highlight number two, importance of cultural fit. Now, this was the most surprising out of both of these articles to me. So this was the key insights here. Employers often overlook cultural fit during hiring, impacting long-term success. So let's go ahead and go to the stats here. Only 43% of employees underwent cultural or values assessments during hiring. Only 50% of companies have built a value-based culture using employee survey data. Now, if you really want to know a strong way to go about cultural fit examinations during an interview, there's a book out there Patrick Lencioni wrote, and it's, let me look back here. It is The Truth About Employee Engagement and the Ideal Team Player. The Truth About Employee Engagement and the Ideal Team Player. If you are someone, a hiring manager, an HR professional, I highly recommend those books. They're simple to read. He keeps them in a fable format. So if you're not like a business book reader like I am, then this is actually still going to be kind of entertaining, right? And so the reason I bring those up is because he talks specifically about hiring someone who is a cultural fit, because he understands the importance of being able to bring someone into the organization that is a fit culturally, because that is only going to enhance their ability to be successful at that organization and the company's ability to gain success from hiring that person, right? There's that phrase, one bad apple spoils the bunch. I could have said that wrong, but it is 100% true. Another good book is Good to Great. If you want to read that, that's where that quote comes from. Get the right people on the bus and they're more likely to follow you in the right direction, right? So what they're calling out here, the reason that I was so surprised is because we know this. We know this. We know so many things in this world about work that many organizations don't adopt, or they don't know because they don't do their research. And that's why this Future of Work Weekly report is so important, in our opinion, because we're at least giving you something that you can think about, right? And so before I go on a whole tangent and make this episode so long, just understand that the importance of cultural fit can impact your productivity, your turnover, your retention, your attrition. It can impact the team, the team's outcome, the team's ability to meet their goals. It can either create politics and silos, or it can eliminate politics and silos, right? You take so much time to build your culture, or you should, and you don't want that one person coming on board to ruin everything for you. So as important as skills and the ability to do the job correctly, it is just as important, if not more, that they are a cultural fit. Now, I will say before we go to the next highlight, you don't want a yes person. You want someone who is going to challenge the team. You don't want to be afraid of conflict. That's not what we're looking for here. You want someone who can match your culture and actually culturally amplify it. That is the best outcome, right? So if you're hiring someone, do not neglect the importance of cultural fit. Okay, let's go to highlight number 3, changing work preference. The key insight from this section is there's a gap between employee work arrangement preferences and companies' offer, affecting productivity and retention. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to the stats here, because you might already know what I'm about to say, but let's go ahead and say them so we can talk about it. 66% of employees believe their work arrangements is their preference. Okay. 32% of employees would consider changing jobs if required to return to the office. That was the part that we were probably both thinking, because what they're saying here is there's a gap between employee work arrangements and what the company offers. And we see that time and time again, especially in these Future of Work Weekly reports, and then the research papers that are out there collecting information on the future of work. So This is a little bit contradicting though, because it says 66% of employees believe their work arrangements is their preference. Meaning, now somebody could take that and say, "Oh, well, that's the majority of workers out there, right?" But just imagine if you hit 66% of your quota at your company level, would you be successful? Not necessarily, right? And then also, if you have 44% of your organization not, or 33%, sorry. If you have 33% of your organization not feeling good about their work arrangement, that is going to cause conflict. And that conflict could turn into turnover. It could turn into disengagement. It could turn into so many different things that are not good for productivity or retention, as they mentioned. And then 32% of employees would be willing to change jobs if return to office was a requirement, right? Now, we have seen the return to office die down a lot, or they just haven't announced them as often. So this is something to think about, right? You got to make it make sense. And I've already talked about that in so many different episodes, so I won't go into there, but that's highlight number 3. And then let's go ahead and close it out, keeping this episode pretty short compared to others, to highlight number 4, which is need for upskilling and reskilling. The key insight here is rapid technological advances necessitates continuous upskilling and reskilling to stay competitive. And the stats is 75% of employees agree they need to continuously reinvent themselves. Now, a lot of this is being driven by AI, as we've talked about. And a lot of organizations, I've seen a couple different sides whenever it comes to AI, which is some organizations won't allow AI at all. Other organizations won't allow the streamline or adoption of AI in their organization, but will allow individuals to use them. And then others have fully adopted AI, but they're not training their people on how to use AI. And so I think that's what they mean here. One, AI. How can we get to where we can globally use AI in our organization? And then how can we make sure that we're training our employees appropriately? And we might see some more AI working consultants come to life here. If they're not already out there, I'm assuming they already are. But beyond AI, what we also need to learn is how to work in this new working world, the future of work, right? Because before, the majority of people were in office, and you might have a couple people working remotely. And even then, you might have multiple locations, right? Whenever I worked at the staffing company, billion-dollar company across the globe, we were working with several people. My position was in the financial services hub, so we were working with people all across the United States. And so, but we never really took the time to understand, what does that look like? What does that mean? How do we reach out to people appropriately? How do we interact with our internal employees appropriately? And so what we're seeing here is actually an enhancement of how we do work and how we operate. Because remember, it's not about where we work anymore, it's about how we work. And so that's what we're talking about here. Needs for upskilling and reskilling. Reskilling might be, okay, you know how to do human resources. That's great. You have 25 years of experience. Boom. Good. Do you know how to do global human resources rather than just the location that you're in human resources? Because it's a big difference, right? Same thing with taxes. Same thing with hiring. Same thing with reaching out to people who aren't in your country. How do you interact with those people? What does the culture look like? How do we make sure that we don't make a mistake whenever we're speaking to different people, right? So I think that's what they mean here, is need for upskilling and reskilling. And that, honestly, that's not just for HR, that's for everyone, right? How do you manage as a remote manager versus an in-office manager? How do you manage projects versus people in seats, or management by observing, right? Which I never thought that was a great management framework anyway. That's terrible. how do you manage based off of performance versus 9 to 5, right? And so this is, I mean, if I was listening to this Future of Work weekly report, I would be taking notes, because these are all things that are going to happen no matter what. So you might as well prepare for it, because you're going to give your employees a better experience. You're going to allow people to grow within your organization. You're going to create better managers. You're going to have a better human resources team that understands that all this starts before the person is even hired, right? Because we talked about hiring, we talked about managing, we talked about upskilling, we talked about cultural fit, we talked about AI, we talked about employee value propositions. So I'll go ahead and wrap this Future of Work weekly report up by saying one of the best ways that you can do this, in our opinion, obviously we're biased, is if you are remote or hybrid organizations, to adopt a tool like Grapevine Software's virtual office platform, where you have your company's social intranet, you have your community newsfeed, you have employee profiles and directories, and then you have a way to connect people from anywhere in the world, right? That is in the description, so be sure to check that out. If you want to get on a call and do a deep dive demo specifically tailored to your organization, reach out to me directly. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this, please like, subscribe, and share with other Future of Work pioneers, so we can continue to get this useful information out to more and more people. That's part of our mission and our vision, specifically for building our community, Untangled Minds. So thanks so much for watching, and we will see you on the next Future of Work weekly report.